This video is only possible thanks to my wonderful patrons. If you'd like to keep me in the video making business, you can do so via the links below. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. In this video, I'm going to talk about how we talk about the climate crisis. The script was heavily influenced by This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein, but her work draws a great deal from Native and Indigenous grassroots movements, thinkers and groups. I have included an extended bibliography in the sources link below.
Hi guys, welcome back. I thought we'd come outside today, just be in nature, breathe that air and just appreciate Mother Earth. So as I'm sure most of you are aware, there was another report out showing just how bad we have damaged the planet. It just makes me so grateful to know this beautiful community, to get to live in this place. But we must remember to do our bit. It's so important to act now. So today we're going to go through my top 10 ways that you can save the earth. We're going to look at my favourite bee hotels, water bottles and other green brands. Links in the description. And I'm going to tell you which NGOs and organisations I choose to support. Because we might feel powerless, but we actually have something very powerful at our disposal. Our money. That's all they care about. But every time we make a purchase, we can choose to vote for environmental protections. But guys, first thing on the list is to get out there onto the streets. Peaceful protest is the best way to change minds. But please, make sure to read up on your local guidelines and laws to make sure you're not breaking any rules. Hi, sorry, couldn't help but overhear. Are you denying climate change? Obviously not, no. It's just, it kind of sounded like you were, so... What is happening? It's fine, it's just, do you mind just, taking a seat over here? I'll just... You're lucky I'm a pacifist. Modern environmentalists talk about what is known as soft denial of the climate crisis. This isn't those who say that climate change isn't happening or it is happening but has naught to do with us. Now, if you want a response to those people, then H. Bomber Guy did a very excellent video on it. Soft deniers fully accept that climate change is happening, is a big problem, and is a problem that people caused. I'm not here to argue that you shouldn't save the bees or shop locally or stop driving. If you can do those things, then please do. Individual actions are and will always be integral to all future progression. But when 100 companies produce 70% of emissions, when we have a decade at most to drastically reduce our use of fossil fuels, and when we have 4 to 5 year election cycles and political parties filled with people simply uninterested in tackling the cause of the problem, conscious consumerism, voting and donating will not and cannot be enough. And to insist that it is a kind of climate denial. We have summits and conferences allegedly aiming to unite the world to tackle climate change. But what actually happens is national leaders try to outdo each other in sounding like they care, making pledges to cut emissions by 20 whenever they'll definitely be out of office. Promises abound, policies remain unseen, and global emissions continue to rise. And the NGOs and green parties that we task with holding our leaders' feet to the forest fires will do what they've done for decades and offer best practice advice for fossil fuel executives. She's shaking her head. What? Too harsh? I watched a documentary once about ocean pollution, and the whole thing was going on about how the fishing industry are like the main polluters of our oceans. But the Save Our Oceans NGO that they spoke to couldn't even talk about it because they were getting large donations from the fishing industry. Your fave and most famous NGOs have a long history in partnering with damaging industries, which lends them legitimacy and huge PR opportunities. And don't even get me started on why they probably shouldn't be accepting oil money. We have no time at all to cut our emissions. We need to stop extraction of fossil fuels yesterday. So no, I don't think the main players, the big NGOs and political parties, will even challenge the cause of the problem, let alone drive the change we need to fix it. The problem with this, your response to the climate crisis, is it accepts as a given the economic ideals, the value systems and organisational structures which caused the problem in the first place.
We are left with a stark choice. Allow climate disruption to change everything about our world, or change pretty much everything about our economy to avoid that fate. But we need to be very clear. Because of our decades of collective denial, no gradual, incremental options are now available to us. That's tough for a lot of people in important positions to accept, since the challenge is something that might even be more powerful than capitalism. And that is the fetish of centrism, of reasonableness, seriousness, splitting the difference, and generally not getting overly excited about anything.
We can't be slowly, incrementally stepping our way out of this one while continuing extraction and focusing on small lifestyle changes such as banning plastic bags. In fact, it's now thought that that softly approach taken by environmentalists since the 80s has actually made the public believe less that we need to do something about it. It's like what our Greta said. When she first found out about climate change as a kid, she didn't believe it. Because if it was true, it would be all anyone was talking about. Surely. I'm guilty of it. I've done that. It's too big. It's too scary. I'll just do my recycling and turn my lights off and eat less meat and hope that somebody else is focusing on the large stuff. And some people are. Some people are attacking the very heart of this monster, going directly after the supply lines and infrastructure needed to keep the beast going. We call them eco-terrorists, radicals, and extremists. They're breaking the law, after all. The law that protects property rights above all other rights. The law that upholds a system which requires endless growth for growth's sake. Why do you think the police are never on the side of the protesters? Is it activism to ask that the world's biggest polluters also put up a solar panel or two? While whole swathes of the world become subjected to drought, desertification, contamination, being submerged completely, and while every single life form on this earth is under threat of extinction. So yeah. To insist that this is all we can do. All we can do is trust that our leaders will do the right thing in the nick of time while we busy ourselves building insect hotels and occasionally walking to work. To insist that we can use the same models of endless growth and private property that has been the bane of nature to save nature. Sorry, that's climate denial. YouTuber John the Duncan did an excellent job of addressing this kind of denial in his video Capitalism and the End of the World. These people, these politicians, these so-called leaders and all their pledges can get into the ever-growing sea as far as I'm concerned. Because without urgent action, they mean nothing. Have faith in humanity. Have faith in individuals, but not them. Thank you. So this is my favourite water bottle. The link is in the... Hey, and welcome back. I'm so excited because today we are going to talk about some super awesome things that we really need to talk about right now. So last month there was this report out which said that we are basically screwed if we don't get our acts together. So today we're going to talk about that. So you all know I am like a major geek when it comes to tech stuff. So today I am going to tell you why I think we will solve the climate crisis and why I think we'll be okay even if we don't. So make sure you stick around because we are going to learn about actual sci-fi worthy things like carbon capture technology, cloud brightening, land reclamation, asteroid mining, terraforming. Find out when humans could be moving to Mars. All coming up, but first please make sure you've liked this video and who are you? Hi, sorry to interrupt. What are you doing in my house? It's just, are you denying climate change? Because it sounds like you're denying climate change. I absolutely am not, and would you please leave? Did you know Grimes was doing an impromptu performance in the park and they're giving away free tickets to the next SpaceX launch? Oh, this is fancy. I like a bit of technology, don't get me wrong, look. Smartwatch. But I do feel and fear that some people put a tad too much trust in high-tech geoengineering fixes to the climate crisis. You see, with a lot of this stuff, take solar radiation management for example. Proponents of SRM have presented ideas such as brightening our clouds, firing a load of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere, and fashioning big sun shields, all designed to reduce the heat and radiation coming from the sun. Big problem with that is it would most likely negatively impact rainfall in Africa and Asia. We can't just go manipulating huge aspects of our ecosystems and not expect huge ramifications. And those ramifications would almost certainly harm billions of people. Technology is obviously super important, but all the technology that we need is already in existence. We just lack the political will to properly roll it out and make it accessible to everyone. Carbon capture is decades away from being any realistic solution to the already existing buildup of pollutants in our atmosphere. And it will probably continue to be used as it already is, filtering emissions directly from plants, which sounds nice, but it makes a lot of waste, and also it allows really dirty industries to suddenly declare themselves clean.
Ironically, 81% of the carbon captured to date has been used to extract more oil from existing wells, by pumping the captured carbon into the ground to force more oil out. This means that captured carbon is being used to extract oil that would otherwise have been left in the ground.
We should not be spending our valuable time and resources looking for ways for polluters to keep extracting and burning fossil fuels. We need to switch now. And we do not know what consequences geoengineering might have. We can only model so far, and scientists all over are saying that things are happening way faster than they thought they would. And once tipping points start happening within biospheres, it's literally impossible to predict what might happen next. And this touches on the heart of this kind of climate denial. It situates humanity separate from and above nature.
When we marvel at that blue marble in all its delicacy and frailty and resolve to save the planet, we cast ourselves in a very specific role. That role is of a parent, the parent of the earth. But the opposite is the case. It is we humans who are fragile and vulnerable, and the earth that is hardy and powerful and holds us in its hands. That knowledge should inform all we do.
If your answer to the climate crisis is to try to once more bend nature to suit our will, to reshape our biosphere in novel and untestable ways, just to ensure that we need not change ours, you make the same mistake we always did. You misunderstand nature entirely. You do not consider it to be a player, merely a pawn. And looking towards space to save us? Less than a decade. That's how long we have to get our shit together. Asteroid mining isn't going to make a dent in that time. Moving heavy industries off Earth, as Bezos said, is just silly. And getting to Mars? NASA thinks we're at least 10 years away from sending manned craft to Mars. And even when we do, then what? Move to Mars? Actually try to live on Mars? We'd have to change our entire physiology, guys. No, it's ridiculous, and I've linked to resources explaining why. If you think some billionaire space daddy is going to take you on his spaceship to go move to Mars, I've got some harsh news for you. Far from trying to save humanity from the climate crisis, they're willing to use the last of our resources and ingenuity so that they and their descendants might survive it. If you look at every one of Elon Musk's seemingly wacky projects, and then imagine that they're intended for some post-apocalyptic Mars life, they start to seem a lot less wacky and a lot more ominous. Meanwhile, actual progress towards actual science is being hindered by these experiments of ego. I recommend Tom Nicholas's video, The Fake Futurism of Elon Musk. And their plans aren't even novel. People have been talking about colonies in space, on the moon, on Mars, underwater, in the Arctic for decades. Bezos's idea about that space donut thing colony, that's literally just ripped from his college professor who presented like the exact same idea in the 70s. It's literally just guys going, oh hey, I've got enough money now to make the Jetsons or Jurassic Park or whatever happen, let's go. Without stopping to think that there might be a reason other than money as to why we never tried living in a floating glass hemorrhoid ring just waiting to be smashed to pieces by an asteroid.
The near mystical quest for energy miracles taps into what may be our culture's most intoxicating narrative. The belief that technology is going to save us from the effects of our actions. Embedded inside the superhero narrative that at the very last minute, our best and brightest are going to save us from disaster.
Humans will likely never be able to live off Earth. We evolved here. Our bodily systems are made to function here and only here. We're not apart from nature, and thinking of it as something that we need to either control or escape is fundamentally wrong. And it is, I'm afraid, climate denial. Okay, see, I kind of thought she'd be back by now. So, yeah. Welcome back to this week's episode of Freedom of Truth. This week we are, of course, compelled to talk about the latest thing which has the Woke Brigade up in arms because they won't shut up about it. That is, of course, the IPCC report on climate change. Code Red for humanity. Now look, you know me. I don't deny climate change is happening or even that humans caused it. That's just common sense. But it strays into the absurd when you have SJWs crying about the West when there are countries like India and China who are polluting this earth in orders of magnitude more than tiny little islands like the UK. It's just more anti-British, anti-West nonsense from the exact same people who we always knew hated our way of life. I'm of course talking about the Marxists and the communists and the liberal media which supports them. And do you think they've ever actually stopped to look and see what countries like the UK have done to help climate change? Like reducing our emissions faster than any other country, like reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, supporting expansions of electric cars, furthering recycling efforts and investing in sustainable technology? Of course they don't, because this isn't about climate change or the ice caps or the polar bears or whatever. This is about forcing Western countries to purposefully hold themselves back so that the countries who are actually polluting the earth can get a head start. Look, at the end of the day, you know what I think. I think we should all just be looking after our own. If everyone simply focuses on their own countries, their own actions, then there would be no need for authoritarian regulations that just harm the economy. And if countries such as the UK can do it, then I see absolutely no reason why a country as seemingly powerful as China can't. But apparently, such an obvious and common sense opinion is deemed racist by the tolerant left. If they think that countries like the UK are going to sacrifice just because other countries are in a mess, then well, I am so sorry guys, I just got a text message from GB News. They want me to go on a panel called Refugees, Dangerous Menace or Drains on Society. I'm sorry, I have to go get ready. Okay, that's not tea. A few weeks ago on Jeremy Vine, that's a British chat and debate show, Ash Sarkar of Novara Media was talking about the IPCC report with talk radio host Mike Parry, and I think it's a perfect encapsulation of this competitive type of climate denial.
It's all very well us doing our bit, but we're responsible for 1% of the world's emissions, okay? But Russia, China, India are all actually stepping up their emissions by using more fossil fuels. I know you can say, well, okay, but we're still going to do our bit, but are we putting enough pressure, and will we at the COP26, on other nations?
There's no point in us because we're so small.
I'm sorry, but that is a load of faff. One of the things that Britain can do is introduce legislation tomorrow which would stop British banks from financing fossil fuel projects.
Yes.
You've also got these plans for a new coal mine in the northeast.
Yep.
This is suicidal of the government. It's absolutely suicidal. Facts are incontrovertible. We are seeing the effects of global heating now, and there are people like you who quite frankly do a disservice to the people of this country.
No, I don't.
By lying to them.
I'm not lying to anybody.
Climate
No, come on,
lies.
Ash.
The idea that the West is doing enough actually is probably one of the most prevalent kinds of climate denial, especially on the right. There's a keenness to produce graphs which show how much emissions countries like China and India are producing compared to countries like the UK. But like most times a right-wing politician or commentator waves a chart in your face, there's context missing. Big context, such as how countries like the UK have shipped off most of their production to other countries, especially countries like China. If the UK was having to make all of its own stuff, there's no way it would be doing so in a sustainable manner, and it would see emissions soar. We don't get to depend on other countries to make all of our stuff and then point and blame them for the pollution that causes. Not only this, but British banks and businesses are still investing huge sums of money into fossil fuel extraction all over the world. And Western companies are directly responsible for climate atrocities all over the place. Look at the Niger Delta and the Gulf of Mexico. Go on, Look at them. Shell and BP have absolutely decimated these areas, causing harm to communities and wildlife for decades to come, possibly forevermore. The Niger Delta is absolutely wrecked, and despite claims by BP that wildlife in the Gulf of Mexico would be okay, we've seen a huge increase in dead baby dolphins washing up all across the Gulf. That's British companies completely ruining whole swathes of other nations. And let's not pretend I can just think of 2 examples of that happening. British companies have been doing that since British companies got their hands on boats. I'm looking at you, East India Company, looting resources and forcing Bengali farmers to grow opium instead of food, leading to tens of millions of deaths in some of the worst famines in history. So maybe the UK has done enough. More than enough. Almost all of the pollutants in our air and on the earth have come from developed Western countries. And seeing as we're in England now, apparently, the UK has been burning coal longer than any other country on the planet. It's all, ooh, us great Brits did an industrial revolution, all proud and stuff, and then shirk all responsibility for the consequences. Guess the UK's had a lot of practice with doing that though, what with all the empire. Not only have we, the West, polluted the most, we have actively destabilised, pillaged and ensured that the global south remains developing, forced into either producing our stuff or processing our waste. Whole swathes of Africa, the Americas and Asia just decimated thanks to our involvement. And yet Western media and political institutions have the gall to host debates about what more those countries should really be doing, how they should change their behaviours, and while they're at it, probably have fewer kids. How much countries like the UK have done to actually help this crisis is hard to say. It's certainly not nothing, but it's even more certainly nowhere near enough. Bare minimum, that's where I'd place my bet. This eagerness to focus on what we're already doing, not what more we could do. This tendency to look inwards instead of outwards. This is a running theme in all conservative propaganda, but I can't be alone in noticing an uptick in recent years. You get the feeling that we're drawing up the drawbridges, battening down the hatches, and I can't help but see it all as preparation. Just more examples of the rich and the powerful looking to survive the apocalypse at the expense of all else. Friends, I had to talk to you today because, as I am sure most of you are aware, we have had yet more news of our imminent doom. Long-time viewers of this channel will know that I have always said that shit is going to hit the fan way sooner rather than later, and now it seems that the scientists have caught up. Code Red for humanity. That's the warning from the IPCC report. And we all know that our leaders won't do anything besides make vague pledges. All the while still funneling money and resources, our money and resources, into the very fossil fuel industries which caused this mess. Just like the tobacco companies, they knew they were poisoning us and our planet, and they covered up the evidence and lied through their teeth. They should no longer be in business. But what do we see? See them still lobbying governments, still swaying so-called environmentalists with their donations, and continuing to ramp up the destruction. And those of you who trust the billionaires to fix this mess, they could choose tomorrow to end this nightmare and so much else, and what do? Use our resources so that rich people can do space tourism, the literal last thing we need. These are the ones we're trusting to save us. Please. Meanwhile, wars still ravage, famines of biblical proportions are ignored. The nations who have the most power are just breeding grounds for bigotry and hatred. They're more concerned with having to share spaces with people who aren't like them than look at the ongoing calamity that they caused. We call a few million refugees a crisis. What about when it's 1 billion? What about when every single coastal region is flooded? When every single public resource, including our water, is owned and guarded and sold only to those who can afford it? What about when our oceans acidify and the main food source for 1 billion people disappears? We did this. We allowed this to happen. And we're not going to stop it. We're all too comfortable in our gilded cages. People are greedy and selfish. That's how we found ourselves here. The only hope that any of us have now is to survive the coming storm. Humanity is doomed. All we can do now is stock up and wait it out. Maybe it would be better if we were gone. We don't deserve this world. We have... Hi. Not you. I know you. I've seen your videos. How? Is anything I just said not true? Well, no. No, not until that last bit. It's rank in here. Really, you hang out in here, do you? Why don't you come back to mine? We'll have a nice cup of tea and let the damp evaporate from your clothes and everything else, I presume.
This, without a doubt, is neoliberalism's single most damaging legacy. The realization of its bleak vision has isolated us enough from one another that it became possible to convince us that we are not just incapable of self-preservation, but fundamentally not worth saving.
See, that's better, isn't it? Huh? Cookie? Anyway, I mean, yeah. When scientists say code red for humanity, we absolutely must take them at their word. It's clearly not hyperbole, they've been warning us for decades. I was watching scientists crying on television because nobody was listening like 10 years ago. We view this crisis as impossible to solve because the solutions run counter to the interests and methods that we have been told are the only way to do things. Did you know that climate issues have only been seen as a political, partisan thing since the 80s? In the 70s, parties worked together to avoid this calamity. But neoliberal ideas that said that government intervention is wrong, that all regulations and red tape would stifle progress and the all-important infinite growth, well, that turned climate regulations into partisan issues, into a matter of liberty and choice and free markets.
We are stuck because the actions that would give us the best chance of averting catastrophe and would benefit the vast majority are extremely threatening to an elite minority that has a stranglehold over our economy, our political process, and most of our major media outlets.
Capitalists have always known that the solutions to climate crises are antithetical to their existence. Since forever, but since the 80s, active anti-environmentalist action has really stepped up, in large part thanks to the fossil fuel industry funding think tanks and politicians and media institutions to attack the science on climate change. But every scientist I've heard has said that yes, while we have done irreparable damage, we do still have time to save humanity and biodiversity on Earth. We can cool our climate and clean our air. And by we, I do mean we, because as we agree, we can't trust them. They who reassure us as they carry on with business as usual. They who profit most from destruction. For most of human history, we saw ourselves as a part of nature. We worshipped it, sacrificed ourselves for it, saw elements as gods and animals as spirits. We need to resituate ourselves within nature, not apart from it, not in charge of it. The earth is not God's gift to us to do with what we like, nor is it just a collection of resources for us to use and profit from. Indigenous activists have always stressed the importance of viewing nature as a player, as an agent with its own rules to which we are subject. We need to stop right now thinking of nature as a thing that we can control. And we need to stop right now thinking of capitalism as the only option. That is something which every individual can do with minimal effort. And don't discount mentality. The collective consciousness of a people can sway politics quickly. But it's not enough, is it? No. Speaking of political action, most environmentalists would stress the importance of participating in local politics, local planning and conservation. Some of the most impactful and effective activism has come from local residents in small groups, wielding their local guidelines and democratic processes to stop harmful industries from setting up shop in their area, and failing guidelines and processes, physically blocking access and construction. There's a reason why people who literally put their bodies in the way of these projects are labelled as extremists. It's because it works, or it can at least slow down progress long enough for other methods to take effect. And everyone who can should vote in every election possible, no matter how small or seemingly inconsequential, and vote for whichever candidate would actually challenge the systems and industries which brought about this crisis. Not the ones who would tinker around the edges of the fossil fuel giants, but the ones who would go after them directly. The ones who would be joining the extremists on the front lines. The one who would put your environment and the health of the community and wildlife at the very heart of all their policy decisions. And in the meantime, support grassroots organisations in their fights around the world in whatever way you can. But importantly, listen to them. Listen to what they are asking you to do instead of just throwing money at the first org that Google shows up. Turn your lights off. Yeah. Only boil as much water as you need. Make conscious consumer and transport choices wherever you can. Sure. Eat less meat. Seriously, do that one. If you don't do anything else after watching this, do that one. Oh, and eat less fish while we're at it too, because the fishing industry are as guilty as anyone for polluting our oceans and depleting biodiversity. Do as much of that kind of stuff as you can. But without us very quickly viewing these companies, these industries, and the system which upholds them as a threat, without us withdrawing our trust from the leaders who continue to fail us, and importantly, without us believing that, yeah, actually we can do an economy different, that yes, actually we can all live well and prosper and thrive in a clean environment, that no, those people are not at the top because they deserve it, they're there because our economic system ensures that they are. But we don't need them to be. The sooner we understand that, the better. Without all that, well then yeah, we can recycle as much as we like and business will continue on as normal until the last drop of oil has been burned and human life on Earth is doomed. This video comes with resources down there, including many ways that you can find out about direct action either locally or globally. Because at this point, so late in the game, after decades of wasted time, it's either direct action or inaction. Innit?